Hey everyone, my name is Moeez and I welcome you all to yet another session of the Cloudways BFCM Prepathon. Day 3. Today we are talking about web performance, and if you are someone who has an online store, a website, or any other business that is on the digital platform, this day is super important to you. And today I'm joined by James. He's the product manager at Cloudways. I myself work as a community manager here at Cloudways, and today we have a very special guest with us, Tom from Online Media Masters. He is one of, as you can call it, a speed guru in the digital world. So, Tom, can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Hey everyone, I'm Tom. I've been doing website speed for about 10 years and welcome.
Yeah. So, Tom, today we will be talking about page speed insights and how to tackle the page speed insights for the BFCM storm ahead. So, the very busy holiday season for people who have online stores or WooCommerce stores or any other thing that they are depending on to have a successful BFCM campaign in the busy holiday period ahead. So, I'm just going to start sharing your presentation that you have prepared for us. So, Tom, the floor is yours. Please begin.
Thanks. So obviously speed is important. It's a ranking factor in Google, and we're going to go through page speed insights and try to get closer to 100% scores, and obviously faster load times. So who am I? I started Online Media Masters over 10 years ago, and I was originally doing website design work and dropped everything to do just speed optimization tutorials. And I actually can't see the slides right now.
That's because I started the solo layout. No worries, that's going to happen.
Okay, I need those.
I would suggest that you have the presentations open separately. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I wrote my first speed tutorial on W3 Total Cache in 2013, and then got into some affiliate marketing and referring people to what was like Max CDN at the time, and then I dove into like hosting, cache plugins, and so forth. I don't know if you visited my website, but there's a lot of good tutorials there, and I've been doing it for 10 years now. On my website, I have a whole about page about me on some incriminating stuff and cat pics if you want to see it, but
Sure, yeah. I mean, we would love to see a couple of cat pictures over here. Why not?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, can you share I can.
Yeah, you can share your screen and show us some of your cat pictures. I don't mind.
Let's see.
Yeah.
We cannot have enough of cat pictures.
Yeah, I can't have enough of cat pictures. I mean, yeah.
Well, if I knew how to share my screen, I would.
You must have a present button right at the bottom.
I see.
Yeah.
Do you have it, or do you want me to share it? I'm in your page now.
No, he got it. He got it. Yeah.
All right, right. Yeah.
Yeah. Cat pictures.
All right.
I'm just looking through.
So there's all my pictures. There's the cats and elephants.
Oh, that's
and everything.
lovely.
That was me in Thailand. I've tried to travel a lot. I mean, I basically spend all day writing tutorials, so like I have to get out of my apartment once in a while.
That's the life. I mean, James, that's something.
Yeah. So I just have a little I do this to show people that like I'm a real person, and I have a bunch of like random and disturbing things about me, because there's so many paid blogs where it's like you don't even know who they are. So
yeah. I mean, this is great. I mean, a lot of people know Tom as someone who always talks about speed and performance, but this is something people will see. Okay, so Tom is actually a real person who likes to enjoy life as well. So that's great to see, Tom.
Yeah, I'm a real person.
All right. So moving back to the presentation.
All right. So the first thing we're gonna do. Oops, sorry. Usually these are links, but obviously run your site through PageSpeed Insights. It can take 28 days to update, just because how it works. So while you're optimizing those recommendations in there, you really want to test your site in other tools, like looking at waterfall charts in Chrome DevTools or GT Metrics. A lot of people just look at the recommendations and PageSpeed Insights, but if you actually take the time to look at a waterfall chart, it can tell you a lot more about specific things that are happening. Speed Vitals is another great tool for measuring core web vitals, and they also have a time to first byte test that measures TTFB in about like 35 global locations. So that's really good for determining like whether your hosting and CDN are actually doing a good job. The Search Console Core Web Vitals report, and obviously focus on mobile first.
All right. So, Tom, before we move forward, I would just like to share a small message with our viewers that there is an amazing giveaway going on at Cloudways currently. So you can win Amazon gift cards, consultancy, and a lot of amazing prizes here at Cloudways. You can find the details in the comment section. And obviously, you can participate in this session by commenting and asking questions from Tom. And in the end, we will decide who gets to win these amazing prizes. All right, Tom, go ahead.
All right. So there's three main parts to Core Web Vitals: LCP, CLS, and TBT. And I'll be going over these a little bit more than just these small descriptions, but LCP is the largest text block or image in the viewport. CLS is basically when like things are shifting around on your website while it's loading. TBT is usually related to CSS and JavaScript. And I'll dive a little bit more into those.
Sure.
So LCP, these are actually links in the slides that I was going to click on. But if you look at the documentation in Google, LCP is actually divided into 4 parts. And time to first byte is 40% alone. Resource load time, the size of your CSS and JavaScript files and fonts. And the reason people get so confused about LCP is because load time is such like a broad, thing to improve. So LCP is definitely the core web vital that people struggle with most. And I believe resource load time is also 40%. And then the other 20% is resource load delay and element render delay. And a lot of that has to do with like excluding above the fold content from optimizations. Like you don't want to lazy load, your top images in there in the viewport. So that's where like things like excluding them from lazy load and using browse source resource hints come into play.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It did actually, surprisingly.
Yeah.
It did make sense to me because I'm not that technical, but James definitely got into his head,
Yeah.
I'm go ahead. Yeah, that makes sense. Perfect. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the gist of it, and I'll dive even more into these. And the thing about LCP specifically is that, like I said, load times is such a broad topic. So PageSpeed Insights will tell you which items are related to LCP in your report. And a lot of the things that I'm going to cover in this presentation are related to LCP. So things kind of like, intertwine with each other.
Okay.
All right, so this is LCP in a nutshell. You got time to first byte, resource load delay, resource load time, element render delay. And you can actually look at a waterfall chart in like Chrome DevTools and see which elements on your website are loading within your LCP time. So if you really want to improve it, just look at your waterfall chart and look at everything that's loading in your LCP and look at those really long lines, and it'll show you which things you need to work on.
Yeah.
Right. But this one looks prettier than the typical Chrome, chart that we have. It's like, wow, you have so many things there.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, this makes it easier to understand for sure. Yeah.
It does actually, because if someone like me can understand this, then I'm sure everyone can, get a hold of what's written over here. So yeah, it does make a lot of sense.
And this is just from Google's documentation. So I mean, you really should take some time looking at their documentation, looking at the LCP subparts, the 4 ones, and kind of get to understand those, and then look at your waterfall chart and see what's loading in your just by doing those 2 things, it'll really help you understand what you need to work on. So LCP, optimizing above the fold content. You've probably seen your largest LCP element in PageSpeed Insights, which is usually like an image or a text block. Obviously, optimizing above the fold content, like making your images, smaller file sizes, pushing things down on the page. So if you have like JavaScript or like Google Ads loading above the fold, you really want to try and like push them down and consider delaying them using a cache plugin. Cloudflare signed exchanges, if you look in your Cloudflare account, that can also help. There's an article by Philip who used Cloudflare workers, and I'm not a developer at heart, so this even Cloudflare workers is a little bit over my head, but he used it to improve LCP by like 80%, and he has a really good tutorial on using Cloudflare workers to improve LCP. Longer cache expiration times.
Tom, just to stop you there, you mentioned Cloudflare.
Yeah.
And is that something that you usually recommend when it comes to CDNs, or do you have other CDNs in your lists as well that you recommend to your viewers?
Yeah, I have a slide specifically that's coming up for CDNs. Cloudflare is definitely one of the best ones, just because, first of all, they're a huge network of like 270 locations, and then also they have tons of features to improve Core Web Vitals and speed and content delivery. But Cloudflare is definitely one of the most powerful CDNs, and they've been around a long time and have had a long time to perfect these things. And then Quick Cloud for Lightspeed is also new. It's newer, but it looks very promising, and it seems to be a really good CDN. And then Bunny CDN is also probably the third one I would recommend.
So, James, we recently partnered up with Cloudflare, and we started to give out Cloudflare enterprise plans to our users. So how has that been? The feedback of the users been using that particular CDN on Cloudways?
Yeah, we are getting like very good feedback, especially because the enterprise version, I think it covers like better routing and more locations. And they have like better tiered caching and all. Yeah. So that's something that the free plan is good, but enterprise is better.
Doesn't come with any of the really good stuff like Argo Smart Routing and image optimization and all that stuff.
Yeah. So coming to this part, I see you mentioned sign exchanges. I've seen this, like I've read it briefly, but can you like get a little bit more into that, but just a simple, easy to understand way, like what is sign exchanges?
I'm not a complete expert on it, to be honest. I just read through their documentation and tested a little bit. But like I have it here. It prefetches your site in Google.
All right.
And they say it's supposed to improve LCP. So when you basically search something in Google and click the search result, it's supposed to make your page load faster.
Right. So it's like, do you know if they preload the link, or?
I guess they
or is it more like AMP? Yeah, the X, the X darling AMP.
I guess they prefetch the link. Like I said, that especially some of the Cloudflare features, like workers, signed exchanges. I know a little bit about it, And I know kind of what it improves, but I just know that it prefetches, so
Right.
it's
Okay.
faster in search results.
All right. That by trying it, you're already more advanced than us because we haven't.
I don't know everything, and I don't pretend
didn't try
like
it
I
myself.
do.
No worries. Yeah. So, sorry. Let's proceed. Yeah.
I know more about like lazy rendering HTML elements,
Mm-hmm.
which is like if that is in certain cache plugins like Lightspeed Cache and Flying Press. If you that can improve both LCP and total blocking time. So that's just one thing you can do. You basically like can lazy load anything on your page, like comments or your footer. So
So it's a bit like lazy loading images, but instead of doing it on images, you just do it on any HTML element. Is that?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
so they load when you scroll down. Is that how it works? So
Yes.
or is it okay? All right.
Yeah, they also have documentation on it. I feel like Gijo from Flying Press has a little bit better. His documentation is pretty like straightforward. With Lightspeed,
It is actually, yeah, it is, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So one of the things I mentioned to improve LCP is optimizing above the fold content. So just looking at your images, you can see which ones are loading there. And one of the things I like about certain cache plugins, Flying Press does it, Lightspeed Cache does it, but WP Rocket really doesn't, is you can actually set a number in the cache plugin on how many images usually load above in the viewport. So for me, it's usually 3. And so they'll automatically exclude those from lazy load and then preload them. So with other cache plugins, sometimes you have to like manually add all the images that are loading, above the fold. So it can take a lot of time to go, especially if you have a large site, to go through all these images and exclude them and preload them. And it's a lot easier just to set a number to do this.
Okay.
Right. And just for like some of our viewers to understand, what is above the fold? Sorry, I've been hearing that word. So does it mean that the page that you see right now is that above the fold?
Thank you for asking that, James. I was wondering that in my mind, and I was like,
like
if James will
I've
ask
been
me,
reading
then
that word. Yeah, what is above the fold?
I mean, it's basically the first content that you see when you open up a page. So when you scroll down, you start seeing below the fold content.
Okay. So that's usually the menu on the top, right? That should be like the above the fold content, and in most cases.
Yeah, everything loading, initially that you see is
whatever
People
screen you
usually
see
have
when
the
it
logos
loads
on the
that
top,
page,
so I mean that would obviously play a part in determining how fast that content loads, because I've seen even we do it like logos on the top fold, on the above the content, as you said, above the fold content.
Yeah, exactly. And that's always one thing I recommend doing is like there's certain things that load across your entire website, like your logo, your fonts, your sidebar image maybe. And I always recommend starting with things that load site-wide and then start going through like individual pages and optimizing those images and everything.
Okay.
So the next core web vital is CLS. And like I said, that just means things are shifting around on the page. And it can be hard to determine what that is. Google's layout shift debugger shows you a GIF that actually like highlights what is shifting around. But even then it can be kind of like confusing because it'll highlight some text or maybe like a button or something. You're like, okay, well, what do I do? So that's why I listed a few common ways to fix layout shifts. A lot of it, I've seen a lot of people, probably the number one thing I see is people are using the asynchronous CSS and cache plugins. So if you try either disabling that or excluding content from that, that's probably one of the first things I would do. So like optimize CSS delivery in WP Rocket, even just turning that off or, tweaking it is probably where I would start. Font display swap. If you see ensure text remains visible during web font load in your PageSpeed Insights report, that just means that your fonts are shifting around on the page. Basically, there's certain types you can control how fonts load. There's like font display optional, swap, and they all do different things, but generally I've seen most cache plugins and even Elementor add the option for font display swap, but from what I understand, optional is probably an even better method, but most cache plugins don't support that yet. So you'll have to research optional. There's some plugins that do it, but most just support swap right now.
So Tom, what do you mean by host fonts locally? I'm pretty sure a lot of people will have this question in mind. What does that mean? Look, host fonts locally.
If you run your site through PageSpeed Insights and you see there's like a third-party code recommendation, and if you see like fonts.gstatic.com or like some third-party font, instead of loading it externally, you want to host it locally, so it's loaded from Online Media Masters or whatever your website is, and host it locally on your server, so it doesn't have to make that external request to Google Fonts.
Okay.
So it's a lot faster, and even if you don't host fonts locally, that can cause a lot of other errors in PageSpeed Insights, like cache expiration time, because you really can't control it. So it'll affect multiple items in PageSpeed Insights. So hosting fonts locally by Elementor does it, or certain plugins do. A lot of cache plugins do it. So it's usually just a matter of like clicking the option, or you can do it manually yourself if you're a developer.
Just want to give and share an advisory as well to our viewers from EU. So if you have from EU, GDPR is a concern as well. So you have to host it locally, or you may be in violation of GDPR. So something to keep in mind. Besides, auto performance as well. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I remember hearing that, and they've been doing that for a while now. So, I mean,
it's best to host it. Yeah.
GDPR and performance, like you should just host them on your server.
So that should be like the way to go then. Yeah.
That's probably the first thing you should do to optimize fonts, is make sure they're pulled from your server. And then preloading them. So if you see like preload key requests in PageSpeed Insights, especially if they're loading, above the fold, or in Gijo always recommends, like, I think it was above the fold or CSS files, but just always test, especially in like a waterfall chart, which fonts you preload, because preloading too many can actually have a negative effect. But yeah, preload them. Specifying dimensions is usually something you just see in a cache plugin. It's usually like add missing image dimensions. But you can also reserve space for like dynamic content. So if something is dynamic and loads, it usually creates a layout shift. So Google has some documentation on basically specifying dimensions for like AdSense, using like a div code. So just know if your ads are causing, or dynamic content are causing layout shifts, and like Google's layout shift debugger to
Yeah.
look at Google's documentation and see how they do it.
Right. Yeah, but that's a good point. I've recently like been through a website. I don't want to say which one, and on my phone, and when you want to click on it, you press it, and, and then it actually moves because that ad is like I don't know, going crazy or something, so it keeps moving.
Yeah, especially on mobile, it happens all the time. I see it. I'm like, this is
really
so
annoying. Yeah.
Annoying.
So, yes, if you're the website owner and you are here,
So,
please do
Tom,
something about it.
Yeah. So Tom, we have a question in the comments that what's the difference between PageSpeed Insights and Lighthouse? That is from Dev2s, I suppose.
So from my understanding, PageSpeed Insights is basically just the tool that shows you scores and everything. And Lighthouse is more like if you open up your Chrome DevTools waterfall chart and see Lighthouse, that is where you test your site. So I know that PageSpeed Insights just takes a little bit longer of a time to update, but I'm pretty sure from what I understand that they use the same reports. I could be wrong on that, but from my understanding, that's basically all it is.
Right.
PageSpeed Insights is just the tool.
Right. Got it. Thank you so much for that, Tom.
Yeah. Okay, so you can read the rest if you have CLS issues. I'll try to make it quick, but animations can cause them. If you have JavaScript that's causing layout shifts, try delaying it. Some cookie notice plugins for like GDPR, you have to add a cookie notice plugin. A lot of those can cause layout shifts, and then sometimes using a separate mobile cache in your cache plugin. If you should be using it and you're not, that can also cause CLS issues. And TBT is usually just related to CSS and JavaScript. Just look at your long main thread tasks and it will show you some things. So I'll cover these a little bit more in detail. But like most of the PageSpeed Insights is kind of complicated, but it's really not, considering they're just taking into account all the things you're doing on your infrastructure mostly. So I always recommend, instead of just like obsessing over these things, you always want to start with the basics and re-look at the fundamental things, because almost all PageSpeed Insights are related to basic things that you can easily fix. So I'm just going to cover these really quick, and so we'll start with DNS. If you registered your domain name with like GoDaddy or Namecheap, that's where your DNS is hosted, and it's very slow. So DNS affects the latency on your website, which affects time to first byte, which affects LCP. So it's a whole chain of events where one thing affects another. So you can just go to dnsperf.com and it'll show you some popular DNS providers and their performance based on user metrics. So I always recommend avoiding GoDaddy, Namecheap. Even Kinksta's Amazon Route 53 DNS is not faster than Cloudflare's. So I always recommend Cloudflare's. It's free.
It's a gold standard.
Yeah, it's the gold standard. So you can just fix that by changing name servers to Cloudflare's.
I feel like DNS is something that a lot of people like miss out on, especially you try optimizing your site, faster hosting and everything, and then you miss out on one of the most fundamental thing. So
it's like
you're
hosted on GoDaddy, and then you switch your hosts, but your DNS is still hosted there, and it's like okay. So Yeah, this is dnsperf.com. It shows you the performance of them. Hosting is obviously a really biased topic because of affiliate marketing, and
Is it really? Is it biased? I mean, I don't think so. What do you say, James?
I'm staying out of this. I think everyone has their strong point, but depends on what you want. Yeah. And a lot of them are decent, some are not. So yeah. We're not gonna drop any names here.
Yeah, there's a lot of different opinions out there. So I try to be unbiased as I can and just say, like, everyone knows, or you should know, Kevin Ohashi, and he does really extensive hosting benchmarks.
Yeah.
So instead of looking at like YouTube tests or whatever, look at his WordPress hosting performance benchmarks and look into their technology, look into if it's shared or VPS, caching layers. Test your global TTFB and speed vitals and key CDN, like I mentioned before, and be careful who you listen to.
Yeah, because when it comes to hosting, like there are a lot of people on Facebook or Twitter who advocate for certain, hosting providers, and obviously, people do get misled by those comments or by those reviews. So I really appreciate that you mentioned Kevin Ohashi, and there are other website hosting review sites as well. Hosting review sites, I'm sorry, where you can find unbiased reviews and obviously make an informed decision on which hosting to use, because as James suggested, it completely depends on your needs. There is no one best hosting provider, is it? Because if what James would require, it would be different from what Tom would require, and obviously what I would need on my website. So it's different. Best is different for everyone.
Yeah, and going back to what you mentioned, I'm not going to name drop anyone, but a lot of the Facebook groups are controlled by hosting companies, and they don't even say it that they work for them, but they're actually like brand ambassadors that recommend certain companies. So even a lot of the Facebook groups are garbage, in my opinion, just because the hosting companies have infiltrated even the unbiased groups. So just be careful.
Yeah.
So CDN, hosting and CDN are the best ways to improve TTFB. So if you see that you need to improve that in PageSpeed Insights or other tools, focus on your hosting and CDN. CDN perf shows different, it's like DNS perf only for CDNs.
Yeah.
And I went through some of the good CDNs like Cloudflare. Cloudflare Enterprise is obviously a lot better with all those features. Flying Proxy is also a good option. They have some Cloudflare Enterprise features too, but Flying Proxy doesn't fix your hosting. It just fixes the CDN part. Quick Cloud for Lightspeed or Bunny CDN. If you're using Flying CDN integrates Bunny CDN with the image optimizer and the geo replication. So basically, if you're using that, use Flying CDN instead. And then one of the reasons I don't like Rocket CDN is because it's only a CDN. It has no like image optimizations, no smart routing, no like features that Cloudflare has. So it's like super basic, and
it's like the original type of CDN, when we all started a long time ago. Yeah.
Exactly. It's made no improvements for a long time. So, there's a lot better options out there. And then go ahead.
No, I was just saying Cloudflare really shook up the market. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you really.
And while you're on Cloudflare, and I think Cloudflare has been mentioned over here like 2 or 3 times as well. So Cloudflare Enterprise, obviously, you're suggesting Cloudflare Enterprise as well, and I think it's a best combination when your hosting provider, offers Cloudflare Enterprise to you as part of their stack as well. So I think hosting providers like these usually do stand out, where they offer Cloudflare Enterprise plans along with their hosting plans as well.
I would definitely agree because you need fast servers and you need a good CDN, and the hosts that combine both of those are going to be the winners. And if you are using Cloudflare Enterprise and other CDN features like Argo Smart Routing, especially with full page caching, it's not as important to, when you're signing up for a hosting plan, to choose a data center close to your visitors. It used to be really important because I want my server hosted in London or wherever, because that's where my visitors are. But with all these CDN features, that really doesn't matter as much, depending on which CDN. With full page caching, Argo especially.
Although in this case, I do beg to differ a little bit in the sense that if you have a very highly dynamic and uncacheable page as well, like for example, LMS or e-commerce, then you may still have location is still something that you may need. Yeah.
True.
So unless you have a quite a static website that you can really cache it properly, completely. So yeah. But generally that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, generally. Good. I'm glad you corrected me because that's very true. So this is without, basically before and after Cloudflare Enterprise. So you can see this was tested in Key CDN's performance test, and TTFB is obviously really important. So you can just see that once you add those features, or this is Cloudflare Enterprise, the TTFB gets way lower when testing in multiple global locations. So you always want to test, especially if your website is global, to test in multiple locations instead of just one. For your theme, Elementor and Divi have made some performance improvements, but generally, I try to avoid those. I know most people can't, but if you have to use them, make sure you enable the built-in performance settings. One thing WP Johnny recommended me is to hard code my header, footer, and sidebar in CSS, so it doesn't use that bloated page builder code. So like I said, always start with things that are loading across your site, and by coding those in CSS, instead of using Elementor or Divi, it'll make your site load a lot faster. Gutenberg is definitely more lightweight, generate press, cadence, Astro blocks, all that stuff. So I know it's not realistic for everyone, but try it if you can.
Yeah.
So this is the coverage report in Chrome DevTools from a site that I blurred out just to show you the amount of CSS. And this isn't even JavaScript. This is just the CSS that Elementor adds. But it can load fast, but if you use Elementor Pro and all these Elementor plugins, it just gets worse and worse. So you really have to make a point to use, be careful when using page builders. Cache plugins. Not a fan of SiteGround Optimizer. It's good for caching, doesn't do a good job with Core Web Vitals though. NitroPack is controversially black hat. There's articles.
Very controversial. Let's not talk too much about that. Just but we agree. I agree.
Yeah, I mean,
I agree as well. I saw these guys in WordCamp Europe, and I did go and say hello, but I didn't discuss more because obviously of the controversy that surrounds this particular product.
Yeah, it's
let's just basically say that they push out whatever JavaScript so that it's not being tested, and that's why it's faster. Yeah, let's just put it that.
Yeah, it moves JavaScript off the main thread, which tools don't detect, but it's still loading. So it's so good cache plugins, Lightspeed Cache, Flying Press. I'm not a huge fan of WP Rocket anymore, just because I feel like they've stopped innovating as much as Lightspeed Cache and Flying Press, and they've kind of fallen behind on features. But that's just me. Configuring the settings properly there's no size fits all. I have some good tutorials out there, but that's a big part of Core Web Vitals. And then if you are using a cache plugin with Perf Matters, just make sure you're not overlapping features. So this is a table that I have for like SiteGround Optimizer and different cache plugins, just showing you why certain cache plugins do a better job than others. And I could spend an hour going through all these, but I'll just say that some are better than others.
I'll just add a shameless plug that we have been improving Breeze. If you
I was about to say it, James.
Yeah, you can consider using Breeze.
There's a plugin missing from Tom's.
My table's missing a plugin.
But anyway, we added like a new database options, which if you haven't checked it out, I'll suggest having a look at it. It shows the auto load and everything as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm happy with I've seen the improvements that Breeze is making, and I'm happy that you guys are moving in the right direction.
So hopefully, when we have you next time in the session, we will see Breeze in your list as well.
We'll see something there.
I guess I've yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, we're improving it day by day. So yeah.
Yeah. So plugins, I always recommend running your site through Query Monitor. It shows you your slowest plugins. These are just a bunch of tools to basically find your slowest plugins. Query Monitor, WP Hive is a Chrome extension. Perf Matters shows you which plugins are using jQuery. So I'll just run through this really quick because I just have screenshots of these. So this is Query Monitor. This is WP Hive. So whenever you're searching a plugin, it adds a little insights tab showing you if it impacts page speed or memory usage. This is WP Optimize, and which is good for cleaning your database, but it shows you which plugins are adding a bunch of load to your database, and if you're not using it, you can remove it. This is Perf Matters. So in the script manager settings, you can enable display dependencies, and it will show you which plugins are using jQuery, which you should try to avoid. It's hard to avoid all of them, but a lot of times in PageSpeed Insights, you'll see jQuery is causing issues. So by avoiding plugins, let's see.
So we have a controversial opinion over here. We have an unpopular opinion that where Zach says that your site should be fast enough before you turn on your caching in CDN. Otherwise, it's if you're hiding behind a CDN or a caching plugin, it's not fast enough. Simple as that. What do you say about this?
I mean, yeah. You're at the end of the day, people always say like, well, it's easy to make like a 300 kilobyte site load super fast, but like the hard part is getting that file size down. So there's really you can add tools like CDNs and like different hosting to make it faster, but like if your file sizes are enormous, like I definitely agree that it should be fast before you start adding these tools. But it really depends on the site,
Yeah, that makes sense as well.
So I showed the coverage tab in Chrome DevTools earlier, but just make sure you look at this to see your largest CSS and JavaScript files. And you'll see that usage visualization on which is adding the most, which has the most file sizes or total bytes. So I have some tips here. This is kind of a long slide, but I won't go through everything. But CSS and JavaScript is usually related to like themes, plugins, and third-party code. So, delaying JavaScript. One thing I do want to mention is the remove unused CSS feature in like WP Rocket is different than Lightspeed Cache and Flying Press, where they load UCSS in a separate file that can be cached, whereas WP Rocket loads it inline, and it's also a controversial subject, but most people, including Perf Matters and Lightspeed Cache and Flying Press, agree that loading it in a separate file is better. So I always recommend it doing the remove unused CSS, not in WP Rocket, but a different plugin.
Anyway, just want to plug. Yeah, if our viewers, it's such a long thing, so if you can't go through it all, you can always check out Tom's website, Online Media Masters, right?
I know. I'm sorry. It's too long of a topic to cover.
It is a complex topic.
It is actually, and it's something
we're
that
ambitious.
Anyone who presents this topic obviously will need to go into details, because otherwise, people won't get the gist of it. So I do agree that it's a long topic, and one session isn't sufficient to cover everything that there is to talk about. But I really appreciated the slides and the things that you prepared for us. Very insightful, amazing session, Tom. So I'm really sorry I have to stop you here, because we are reaching our time, because we have a few more sessions after this as well. So
it's all right.
Yeah, so really appreciate your time today, and an amazing session on speed and performance and page speed insights. Before we say goodbye, I just want to know your final words, your thoughts on the experience that you have had in the BFCM Prepathon. What do you want to say about that?
Oh, it was great. I mean, I enjoyed everything. We're still recording now, but I thought everything was really well coordinated, and I just think it's great that you guys are putting helpful content and getting these speakers together to help people out in preparation for it. So I think not a lot of people are doing it, so I'm a fan of it.
That's great to hear, Tom, especially coming from someone like you. And that's really amazing to hear. So guys, this was Tom from Online Media Masters with his tips and tricks on how to improve page speed insights to tackle the BFCM storm. But we are not done yet, because we have a couple of amazing sessions left in the day as well, with the next one coming in about 15 minutes, which is a panel discussion on top practices for blazing fast website. It's a must watch, guys. Do stay tuned in for that session, and we will see you guys in about 15 minutes with the panel and the host as well. So thank you, Tom. Thank you, James. This was great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.